This is my sophomore album, and it's the way it's being produced is quite diagonally opposite to the way I went about my first one. Because it's called Videography Collective, and it really has been a collective effort. There's 16 musicians, I think, if I'm not wrong. 16 musicians from very different parts of the world. Whereas the first one was a very solitary effort where I played everything, I did everything. Apart from a drummer, everything I did on it was on my own. So I consciously wanted a very different approach on this one. And also because I was bored with listening to myself the whole time. And I was a little hungry for inspiration from other artists as well. A lot more than I can probably even summarize in this interview, to be honest. To start off with, a lot of these songs, in contrast to my last album, were actually composed on stage because I've been touring and gigging a lot the past 2 years. So most of these songs were actually conceptualized to be played live, which is very different from my last one, which was a completely studio album. And so it was basically on the fly. A lot of these songs were written. And the reason I say it's 3 years, because I started, some of the songs were written almost 3 years back. And funnily enough, last year in February, 2012 in February, I actually thought I was finished with the album. And I basically eventually realized I wasn't, and threw it all away and started from scratch. I didn't throw it all away, I kept the basic tracks, and I moved to India for a couple of months to continue recording. Because, and this is the crux of it, I think. This is the first album I've consciously tried to incorporate parts of my Indian heritage into. I think it's a lack of cultural identity, which is what it's more about. Because I literally do not think I have a very cultural identity. Or if I do, if it actually is one that exists, it'll be a multicultural one. The culture and the environment you grow up in is a little like a kaleidoscope. You're looking at the music through in some ways. But at the end of the day, it's not the actual essence of what eventually comes through, which doesn't necessarily decrease its importance or significance. But at the end of the day, for me, it's more about unifying and not separating people or mentalities. To come back to your question, do I really think I don't have an identity? I gave up asking myself this question a long time back because it just didn't get me anywhere. Nope. There's so much of pretentious music going on in the name of fusion. I would not like to be part of that movement at all. This is one of the biggest reasons I took so long to actually take that big step. For me, it was big for me, to actually start incorporating Indian instruments, Indian approaches to music. All the words you'd like to hear to make you feel alright. Yes, I'm afraid so. I wrote, composed, arranged, produced all of the songs. Ironically, I belong to this group of people with roots in India who actually grew up with English as their mother language, even though I speak two other Indian languages, Hindi and Bengali. but I think in 4 languages, and it took me a long time to actually come to a solid conclusion about which language is really the one I express my self the best in. I actually tried Bengali, and I hope to record a song someday in Bengali, because that's another language very close to my heart. But then again, German is very close to my heart as well, and it's the country I've spent most of my life in now. What was the question again? No, all English, because it's still that language I find the easiest to summarize my thoughts in. Right, so there's 3 words: Bideshi, which is Bengali for foreign, which is, we talked about that, what being foreign means in a way. Übersetzung is translation, that's German for translation, because this has been a lot about not getting lost in translation with myself, because I'm culturally schizophrenic. And then there's collective, which is English for unit of organization, which was a very important aspect for me in this album, to make sure that there's a collective voice happening in representing the music, and not just one guy spending too much time on his own in his studio, which is what the first album was about. This is the funny thing, actually. I think every single release today is independent. I mean, even the so-called label releases, there is no artist who actually releases music without a good deal of independence in today's industry. That being said and done, I still don't know if I'll be collaborating with the label or not for the nitty-gritties. The situation's completely up the way it is. Probably the biggest boon and curse that's happened to the music industry in the past decade. Even rock stars don't live the way they used to anymore, at least the ones who've developed their careers in the past decade. So in that way, piracy has been a reality check for every person working in the music industry. Musicians have started to realize they need to put in a lot more work. It's a lot more of a live performance than putting out a record which had way too much auto-tune on it or something. Actually, I never stopped touring, to be honest. I mean, I don't. Unfortunately, I'm a working musician, and the format of recording an album, and putting it out, and then supporting it by a tour doesn't really exist anymore. I'm always touring, and I'm always recording music, so the entire process is a lot more. What's the right word? This is constant work in progress. I tour in India regularly. I live in 2 countries right now. I've been visiting India quite regularly, working with a lot of artists from the country who I like. And it's more of a constant process rather than a consecutive one.
I've been playing with TL for about, I think, 3 years now. So generally when he comes down from Germany, we do a couple of shows together. And it's always been very fleeting, but the last time he came down, it was for a significant amount of time, and he had this plan to record with me for his album. So it was just a natural progression of how we've been making music together over the past few years. So it was very brief but very concentrated and very substantial at the same time. That's how it happened. I think most music is possibly made in this way these days, which is everyone doesn't necessarily have to be in the same room playing at the same time, because it isn't as practical or as cost effective or even possible anymore, especially since people are often in different parts of the world collaborating on music. So it wasn't anything out of the ordinary or extra difficult or anything. It was probably tougher for TL since he's the producer of the album, but as a musician on the album, it really doesn't matter whether I recorded here or, I don't know, on the street or anywhere. It really doesn't matter. The space doesn't matter anymore. I think technically I probably bring the same skill set to most of the music that I do nowadays. That's possibly why people want to work with me in the first place, because they know that I have a certain set of skills and a certain kind of language that I can bring to it. But what is specific about TL's music is that there's a very important sense of space and restraint, which possibly is even more crucial to his music than in any of the other contexts that I play in.
I think before, more than anything else, I can't stress enough on the importance of realizing the value of sustainable work ethics. I don't think it ever was. It never really got there in India, to be honest. But it's a lot of people trying to be sex, drugs and rock and roll, which is a little silly, because that's not going to get anyone anywhere at the end of the day. I'll put it this way: some of the most brilliant musicians I've met in the entire world come from this country, and some of the most unprofessional also happen to be here. I ran into Karma City Gokar. She did some artwork for Amit Datta's album, which I happened to be involved in as well. I was completely in love with her work immediately when I checked out her website and stuff, because she has a very similar cultural background to mine. She grew up in different countries as well, and is also very universal in the way she looks at culture and its relationship to art. It seemed like a very visual and very connected representation of exactly what my music sounds like. What's the scene? Did I talk bullshit?
No.
Okay.